Welcome back everyone. In today's session, I am going to give you the line-by-line explanation of With the Photographer written by Stephen Leacock. Do check the pinned comment section for all important video links related to your syllabus. Dear students, please subscribe to our channel, comment, share and like to support us. This story has been narrated in the first person by an unnamed 40-year-old man. Since it is narrated in the first person, we get a clearer understanding of the complex emotional journey of the narrator. The narrator is the protagonist of the story. He does not have a name, but he tells his own story, and his story is relatable. The reader realizes from the beginning of the story that Leacock may be exploring the theme of insecurity. A humorous take on the protagonist's visit to a photographer, it is an experience that every individual can identify with and contrast with the photography of today. हम सब कभी ना कभी एक photographer studio में गए हैं to get ourselves clicked. And we know the techniques of photography of modern times. We live in an age of Photoshop. We know filtering, we know editing, we have tools. And we also have many techniques to change our appearance so that we can project ourselves according to a particular social standard, beauty standard. So we live in an age of Photoshop, and we also live in an age of political correctness. And the remarks of the photographer and the attempts at body shaming would be absolutely unacceptable. Therefore, we may find the content of this story, some parts of it rather unacceptable when the photographer is continuously humiliating the protagonist. Yet, the author can construct a hilarious situation that is inoffensive. And how does he do so? By using wit and humor, and also by packing in a very powerful social message. Before starting the line-by-line explanation, I'll just quickly justify the title, With the Photographer. A very simple title, but it is ironical and meaningful. The title is so simple that it gives us no idea of the depth of multi-layered meaning in the narrative of the story. So apparently the title suggests that there is an encounter between a narrator, the protagonist, and a photographer. This is possibly a regular routine encounter between a customer and a photographer. But as we read the story, we find the story is filled with emotional complexity, social critique, and power dynamics. The word with the photographer suggests a sense of cooperation or collaboration. But again, as we read the story, we see that ironically there is no cooperation, there is no collaboration. On the other hand, the photographer is going on insulting the narrator. He is stripping the narrator of his individuality, dehumanizing him. He is dominating the entire process. Why? Just to click a perfect photo. In this way, this is a satire. I want my photograph taken, I said, I, the unnamed narrator of the story. The narrator arrives at a photographer's studio with a desire to have his photograph taken. What is the setting of this story? This studio, the photographer's studio. And what is the narrator's purpose of visit? It is very personal and subjective. He has come here to get his picture clicked with the hope and anticipation that the picture will resemble him as closely as possible. It will resemble his appearance very closely, and it will also appear to be realistic and lifelike. He will give this photograph to his friends so that after his death they will look at it and they will find comfort and solace. And They will also remember him. They will remember him fondly. It will keep him in their memories forever. The photograph will act as a reminder. This is his purpose of visit. And obviously, the narrator is very enthusiastic. The narrator is very eager to get his photograph clicked, filled with enthusiasm and interest. In contrast, we have another character, the photographer, who looked at the narrator without enthusiasm. So we have the narrator's enthusiasm versus the lack of enthusiasm of the photographer. What is the initial reaction of the photographer? He looked at the narrator without enthusiasm, uninterested about his presence, disinterested in and unenthusiastic about the narrator's presence. He was a drooping man, a bending man in a grey suit. Grey is a color which is often associated with something dull, mundane and boring. The ambience in the story at the studio is also very dull, cold and mechanical. Industrial, to be specific, industrial. एक इंडस्ट्री की तरह है. चारों ओर फोटोग्राफी की टेक्निकल चीजें हैं, बीच में फोटोग्राफर है, वो ज्यादा बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, and he is almost like a scientific artist involved in his business. He is not interested, he is detached, he is indifferent to the emotional or personal aspects of his subjects. Here, the narrator is his subject of photography. His customers are his subjects of photography, and he is perhaps not at all interested in their emotional aspects, in their emotional journeys. People come to the studio to get their photographs clicked so that they can preserve a part of their life as a fond memory. मगर ये जो photographer है, he is like a scientific artist, very focused in his work and almost detached, completely detached from the emotional or personal aspects of his customers. He is portrayed as a stoic person, almost robotic figure who is indifferent to the narrator's feelings. His approach to photography is formulaic, and he is obsessed with creating an idealized image rather than capturing the subject's authentic self. He is just an artist involved in the technicalities of his job. So there is artificiality, there is objectivity in his approach. There is no need to describe him. Everybody knows what a photographer is like. Sit there, he said, and wait. Quite coldly, he simply instructs the narrator to sit there and wait. I waited an hour, a long tedious wait. And in order to pass his time, the narrator reads the Ladies' Companion for 1912, the Girls' Magazine for 1902 and the Infants' Journal for 1888. This waiting is significant. This waiting shows, number one, the patience of the narrator. Number two, this shows his anticipation and hopefulness. He has come here with a positive frame of mind. He wants to preserve this moment of his life. He wants to preserve this moment as a memory, as a joyful memory of his life. And number three, he realizes during this period of waiting that he is an unacceptable person in this studio. I began to see that I had done an unwarrantable thing, an unacceptable thing in breaking in on the privacy of this man's scientific pursuits. With a face like mine, photography is a scientific pursuit to this photographer. He is engrossed in the technicalities of this job. He is a skillful photographer. उसमें कोई doubt नहीं है. But this man is almost like a robot. This man is almost like a machine. And according to the narrator, his realization is that the photographer is not interested in a face like mine. The narrator is aware of the fact that he does not have a very handsome and appealing face. He does not have many desirable features which make him look striking and handsome. He has imperfections. He has many shortcomings in his face, and he is well aware of that. Self-awareness of the narrator. This realization is significant during this wait. After an hour, the photographer opened the inner door, and 1 hour of waiting is a pretty long time. शायद जो ये photographer है, he is also unnamed. This photographer was completing some tasks, but this seems to be quite unprofessional to keep a customer waiting for such a long period of time. This shows the obsession of the photographer. वो क्या कर रहे थे अंदर? एक कस्टमर को बाहर 1 घंटा बिठा के वो ऐसा क्या काम कर रहे थे जो उतना इम्पोर्टेंट था, कस्टमर से भी इम्पोर्टेंट था. So this establishes the character of this photographer. This photographer is an eccentric person, obsessed with his photography, obsessed with his art. The idiosyncrasies of the photographer. We will see this in the course of this story. Come in, he said severely. He did not say this also in a friendly manner. बहुत rude तरीके से, strictly. He said, come in. I went into the studio. Sit down, said the photographer. Another instruction. Come in, sit down, sit there, wait. So cold, so impersonal, and so indifferent. I sat down in a beam of sunlight filtered through a sheet of factory cotton hung against a frosted skylight. The studio is depicted as a place of science and precision, reflecting the photographer's professional and meticulous nature. His obsession with minute details of his art. We have the area where the protagonist waits. We have the area where the narrator waits. He reads old magazines. We also have the photography room with its frosted skylight, cotton sheets and photography equipments. So, this is the setting of this story, and the narrator feels that he is an unwelcome person into this photographer's meticulous world. The photography room where the photo shoot is going to take place is described in a way that emphasizes its impersonal nature. Emotion की कोई जगह नहीं है इस place में. The beam of sunlight filtered through a sheet of factory cotton, the machinery, the hooked stick used for adjustments, all give the room a cold and industrial feel. So this is a very cold and industrial setup. This is the setting. The photographer rolled a machine into the middle of the room and crawled into it from behind, just like a robot. He was adjusting his equipments. and the stool was placed in such a position that the lighting was suitable for the photography. He was only in it a second, just time enough for one look at me, one look at his subject, the narrator, and then he was out again, tearing at the cotton sheet and the window panes with a hooked stick, apparently frantic for light and air. So he was not at all interested in making the ambience joyful. Ambience अगर joyful है तो जो subject है वो happily अपना फोटो खिंचवा पाएंगे, मगर यहाँ पे एक इंडस्ट्रियल सेटअप की तरह इस जगह को फोटोग्राफर ने बना दिया। वो चुपचाप अपना काम कर रहे थे, किसी चीज़ के बारे में ध्यान नहीं दे रहे थे, और जो कस्टमर है, जो सब्जेक्ट है, उनके साथ भी उनका जो एक रिलेशनशिप है वो बिल्डअप नहीं हुआ था. So there was no comfort between the two. It was just a job for the photographer. Then he crawled back into the machine again. So here we have humor. He crawled back into the machine again and drew a little black cloth over himself. This time he was very quiet in there. I knew that he was praying and I kept still. The narrator kept still. He did not move, realizing that the photographer needed concentration and focus. When the photographer came out at last, he looked very grave. He looked very serious and he shook his head, perhaps in disappointment. He did not approve of the photograph that he had clicked. The face is quite wrong, he said. Humiliating moment for the narrator. Body shaming by the photographer. Perhaps the photographer felt that the face, the appearance of the narrator did not meet the predetermined beauty standards, the social norms set by the society related to beauty and appearance. He did not have desirable features. His features were undesirable. There were many imperfections in his face and he said it quite bluntly. This is body shaming. This is an insult. Instead of getting offended, instead of being defensive or getting shocked and surprised, what is the reaction of the narrator? I know. Self-awareness of the narrator. I answered quietly, calmly, in a composed manner. I have always known it. Self-awareness of the narrator. He sighed. I think he said the face would be better 3/4 full. No hesitation on the part of the photographer. He was telling all these things bluntly, without caring about the emotional impact of his words on the narrator. I am sure it would, I said enthusiastically, for I was glad to find that the man had such a human side to him. After all, he was not distant. He was not so detached, impersonal. He was just like another human being. This was his observation, and according to the narrator, this made the man reveal his human side to him. So would yours. In fact, I continued, how many faces one sees that are apparently hard, narrow, limited, but the minute you get them 3/4 full, they get wide, large, almost boundless in. Despite being humiliated, the narrator speaks to the photographer in a very normal way. हमारे जैसे ये इंसान हैं. And the narrator started to talk to the photographer. But the photographer had ceased to listen. He did not listen to him. He did not pay him any attention. He came over and took my head in his hands and twisted it sideways. He started to make adjustments, the different poses. I thought he meant to kiss me and I closed my eyes. Humor. I closed my eyes. He came very close and he thought that he was about to kiss him. So this is humor. But I was wrong. He twisted my face as far as it would go and then stood looking at it. Objectification of his subject, dehumanizing his subject. He was just an object, and the photographer was making adjustments. He sighed again, still displeased, still. The appearance of the narrator did not meet the certain aesthetic preferences or criteria that the photographer followed. I don't like the head. Body shaming. तो क्या करे? Head का क्या करे? He said. Then he went back to the machine and took another look. Open the mouth a little, he said. I started to do so. Close it, he added quickly. Then he looked again. The ears are bad. Everything is bad. Very good, he said. Droop them a little more. Thank you. Now the eyes. Roll them in under the lids. Humor. But we have satire. We have irony along with humor. The pain of the narrator is revealed. He is not complaining till now, but this shows the pain of the narrator, the humiliation that he has to face just to get a photograph clicked. And turn the face just a little upward. Yes, that's better. Now just expand the lungs. Now this is absurdity, the eccentricity, the idiosyncrasy of the photographer. His obsession with creating an idealized image of his subject. He just wants to click a perfect picture. He is not at all worried about the emotions of the person in front of him. And hump the neck. That's it. And just contract the waist. This is absurdity, humor, and also irony. And twist the hip up toward the elbow now. I still don't quite like the face. It's just a trifle too full, but these words are just unacceptable and very humiliating. The photographer adjusts the narrator's head by taking hold of it and twisting it sideways. This action suggests that he is attempting to adjust the angle of the face for the photo. The narrator initially misunderstands the photographer's intention and thinks he is going to kiss him. He closes his eyes, but quickly he realizes that the photographer is adjusting his face for the desired pose. The photographer again and again expresses dissatisfaction with the narrator's ears, and then the eyes, and then also the hip, the elbow, everything. The photographer instructs the narrator to roll his eyes in under the lids. These instructions show that the photographer wants to alter, he wants to change the appearance of the narrator's ears and eyes to conform, to follow his aesthetic preferences or to achieve a specific photographic effect. So, he is not at all bothered about the humiliation that he is subjecting the narrator to. I swung myself round on the stool, still following the instructions of the photographer. Stop, I said with emotion, but I think with dignity. Despite being insulted, the narrator maintains his dignity. This face is my face. It is not yours. It is mine. I have lived with it for 40 years. I know its faults. Self-awareness of the narrator. I know it's out of drawing. I know it is not proportionate. There are many imperfections. I have many shortcomings. This face is my face. I am in control of this face. It is not yours. It is mine. I know it wasn't made for me, but it's my face. अब क्या करे? ये face मेरा face है. मैं इस face को change नहीं करना चाहता. He has accepted his appearance. He has no grudges. He has no complaints. Uncomplainingly, he has accepted his appearance. This face is a part of his existence now. The only one I have. This is unique. His uniqueness is his face. I was conscious of a break in my voice, but I went on. Break in my voice क्यों? Because he was really emotional. Such as it is, I have learned to love it. Self-love, self-appreciation, self-worth. And this is my mouth, not yours. These ears are mine. And if your machine is too narrow, so here we have a machine and here we have a human being with emotions. Here I started to rise from the seat. He is rebelling. This story depicts an imbalanced power dynamic between the photographer and the narrator as the subject in terms of self-representation. The photographer wants to represent the subject in a particular way following the predetermined beauty standards. But the subject, that is the narrator, he does not want to alter his appearance. The photographer assumes a position of authority, imposing his vision and judgments on the narrator's appearance by making the adjustments. He starts to control the narrator. He dictates how the narrator must present himself, alter and change his features to fit certain societal beauty standards. This power dynamic diminishes, reduces the narrator's autonomy, the narrator's control over his own self-representation. And here the narrator makes an emotional outburst. He resists this power imbalance and he asserts himself. He critiques the photographer's control and highlights the importance of self-acceptance and self-expression despite various social pressures. He is not willing to listen to the photographer anymore because this is his face, a part of his, an integral part of his existence. He cannot change it and he does not want to change it. This shows his strong commitment to authenticity. He is resisting, compromising self-authenticity over here. Here we have a change in the narrator's emotions. The narrator's emotional state undergoes a transformation throughout the story. Initially, he comes here hopeful of getting a perfect, realistic image of himself. He is hopeful that the photographer will help him preserve this as a memory. But when the photographer criticizes him and attempts to change his features, the narrator's emotions shift towards dissatisfaction. This portion, this emotional outburst shows the narrator's emotional shift. He is dissatisfied, frustrated, and he feels that this is an intrusion by the photographer on his life. And this emotional change reaches its peak when the narrator delivers a passionate monologue at the end, rejecting the photo clicked by the photographer. So, we have a change from anticipation to disappointment, ultimately leading to a strong affirmation of his own self-perception and rejection of external artificial beauty standards. So we have appearance versus reality as a theme. Superficiality versus authenticity. Even during such an emotional outburst, the photographer was unmoved, quite disrespectful towards the narrator's wishes. Snick, click, the photographer had pulled a string, the photograph taken, his purpose fulfilled, his task well done. I could see the machine still staggering from the shock. I think, said the photographer, pursuing his lips in a pleased smile, that I caught the features just in a moment of animation. Obsessed, still engrossed in his task. So I said bitingly, features, you didn't think I could animate them, I suppose, but let me see the picture. Oh, there's nothing to see yet, he said. I have to develop the negative first. Come back on Saturday and I will let you see a proof of it. On Saturday, I went back to see the final product. The photographer beckoned me in. This time he called the narrator in. I thought he seemed quieter and graver than before. I think there was a certain pride in his manner. This time he was not indifferent. This time there was pride in his manner. What is the significance of this pride? This shows the photographer is pleased with the final outcome. He has made a lot of changes and finally he has got the perfect picture. He unfolded the proof of a large photograph and we both looked at it in silence. What is the significance of this silence? Both the photographer and the narrator look at the final product in silence. The climactic moment. What will be the reaction of the narrator? What will be the reaction? Immediately, the narrator rejects this photograph as a manufactured object. He feels that the photograph does not resemble him in any way. Is it me? Surprise, I asked. Yes, he said quietly, it is you. And we went on looking at it. The photographer filled with pride and the narrator perhaps filled with surprise, disbelief and shock. The eyes, I said hesitatingly, don't look very much like mine. Why? Because the photographer has changed the eyes. Oh no, he answered, I have retouched them. A lot of editing, retouching and alterations. They come out splendidly, don't they? So they come out splendidly. What does this mean? That this is a manufactured version of the narrator. The photographer has succeeded in achieving an idealized and manufactured version of his subject. And the narrator will immediately reject this. And by rejecting the photograph, the narrator asserts that embracing one's true identity is more valuable than striving for an idealized and manufactured version of oneself. He does not want external validation. He does not want to follow the set beauty standards. Imperfection से तो क्या है? जो है वो सिर्फ उसका है, अपना है. And this is the inner beauty of a person. Self-acceptance, self-appreciation and self-love. A strong affirmation of one's own self-perception without blindly following social norms. Fine, I said, but surely my eyebrows are not like that. No, said the photographer. The photographer is still blunt, impersonal, and he is humiliating the narrator again and again. He does not have any hesitation. Without any moral qualms, he just bluntly tells, with a momentary glance at my face, the eyebrows are removed. Without the permission of the narrator. The narrator wanted a realistic image of himself. But here, the narrator has removed the eyebrows even. We have a process. It is all an artificial, mechanical process, dehumanization. The Delphi for putting in new ones. The technique, the process for putting in new ones, editing, filtering. You will notice here where we have applied it to carry the hair away from the brow. And this is why the photographer is called a scientist. His obsession with the science behind photography. I don't like the hair low on the skull. So what? You don't like it. But who has given you the permission to change my appearance? Oh, you don't you? I said. No, he went on. I don't care for it. I like to get the hair clear back to the superficies and make out a new brow line. What about the mouth? I said with a bitterness. See? Shift in emotions, transformation that was lost on the photographer. Is that mine? It's adjusted a little, he said. Yours is too low. Again, humiliation, body shaming. I found I couldn't use it. The ears though, I said, strike me as a good likeness. They are just like mine. Yes, said the photographer thoughtfully. That's so, but I can fix that all right in the print editing. I can fix any imperfection. So, however you may look, I will change everything and make you look the best. We have a process now. Modern technology, advancement in the field of photography. The sulfide for removing the ears entirely. I will see if the photographer's boastful nature of the advancements in the field of technology is also humorous and it is bordering on absurdity. Listen, I interrupted. Drawing myself up and animating my features to their full extent and speaking with a withering scorn, contempt that should have blasted the man on the spot, that should have taught the man a befitting lesson. Listen, I came here for a photograph, a picture, something which, mad though it seems, would have looked like me. But this photograph does not look like me. This is not me. I wanted something that would depict my face as heaven gave it to me. I wanted a representation of my natural self as heaven gave me. भगवान ने जैसे मुझे बनाया वैसा एक फोटोग्राफ अगर मुझे मिल जाता तो मैं बहुत खुश हो जाता. Humble though the gift may have been. So, heaven has given me this appearance, including all imperfections. And I am grateful to God for this gift. This gift is humble, but I am grateful to the Lord for it. I wanted something that my friends might keep after my death to reconcile them to my loss. This was my personal reason. It seems that I was mistaken. What I wanted is no longer done. So, you think you have done your job as best as you could, but unfortunately, you are wrong. Go on then with your brutal work of retouching, altering everything. Brutal work. So, he is not at all pleased with the photographer's alterations. He calls it brutal work, and this expression shows his anger. He is critiquing the photographer's task of retouching, editing, filtering and altering his appearance. Take your negative or whatever it is you call it, negative, the negative photo the negative of the photo, dip it in sulfide, bromide, oxide, cowhide, whatever, anything you like. Remove the eyes, correct the mouth, adjust the face, do whatever you want. Restore the lips, reanimate the necktie, reconstruct the waistcoat. Coat it with an inch of gloss, shade it, emboss it, gild it, till even you acknowledge that it is finished. Then when you have done all that, keep it for yourself. Mujhe nahi chahiye. Keep it for yourself. Complete rejection of the art of the photographer and your friends. Keep it for yourself and people like you. They may value it. To me, it is but a worthless bauble. I broke into tears. This is an emotional outburst. He broke into tears and he left without the photograph. To him, it is just a worthless, a valueless bauble. What is the meaning of bauble? An inexpensive piece of jewelry which has little artistic value. Here, it means a thing of no value. Now, at the end of the story, this monologue delivered by the narrator is important. What is the critical significance of this? This shows the significance of self-acceptance. Here he is valuing inner authenticity over external validation. He is prioritizing his own perception of self-worth. He is valuing inner authenticity. This is very important. He is not following social beauty standards. The narrator breaks into tears as a result of number 1, deep disappointment, number 2, frustration, number 3, dissatisfaction with the final photograph. The situation is overwhelming. The tears are a manifestation of his emotional distress, and he is unable to reconcile his hopes and expectations with the actual result. And he also outright rejects the photograph. The story raises questions about whether a photograph can truly capture a person's essence and individuality in modern times. The narrator's reaction suggests that he believes a photograph must reflect one's true self. However, the editing, the alterations made by the photographer challenge this notion. A photograph can capture a moment or a physical likeness, but it may not always capture the full depth and essence of a person's identity. In this way, this story also, to some extent, reflects on the limitations of photography in representing the complexity of human individuality. Their students also note down the themes of this story. Quickly write down humor and satire, number 1. Number 2, appearance versus reality. Number 3, effects of modern technology. Number 4, power dynamics. The narrator's rebellion against this power dynamic and assertion of his identity serves as a critique of such power imbalances in the society. And the next theme, identity and self-perception. We also have authenticity versus social expectations. So these are some of the themes. This story provides a satirical commentary on society's obsession with idealized images. And in this pursuit, the individuality is erased. In the pursuit of artificial perfection, a person's individuality is erased.